In the spring of 1865, the United States declared slavery over. The Civil War had ended, and with it came the promise of freedom for millions of formerly enslaved black men, women, and children. Church bells rang, newspapers printed bold headlines, and a nation told itself a powerful story that justice had finally arrived. For many, freedom felt real, but fragile. Families stepped off plantations for the first time. People searched for loved ones sold away years earlier. Formerly enslaved men walked public roads without permission, believing a new life had begun. But freedom did not last. Within weeks, southern towns began to change. Local jails quietly filled with black men, not accused of serious crimes, but arrested for standing in the wrong place, for not carrying proof of employment, for violating newly written local rules that had not existed before. The same system that had once controlled black bodies through chains was rebuilding itself through law. What followed was not an accident of history. It was a deliberate response to freedom itself. This story is not only about the past. It is about how systems adapt when they are threatened, and how power survives by changing its appearance. To understand what happened after slavery officially ended is to understand how forced labor continued. Legally, in the United States for decades, in this documentary, we will uncover how freedom was undone, how the law became a weapon, and how millions were pulled back into bondage under a new name. If you value honest history and stories that are rarely told in classrooms or textbooks, take a moment to support this channel. Like this video, subscribe for more in-depth documentaries, and join us as we uncover the hidden chapters of American history that still shape the world today. When slavery officially ended, the United States stood at a crossroads it had never faced before. Freedom was no longer an abstract ideal debated in speeches and courtrooms. It was a living reality affecting millions of people overnight. For formerly enslaved black Americans, emancipation carried a profound sense of possibility. Many believed that freedom would bring land, wages, education, and the right to shape their own futures. Families reunited when they could. Communities formed schools and churches with astonishing speed. For the first time, black voices entered public life openly, voting, organizing, and imagining citizenship as something real rather than distant. Yet this fragile moment of transformation unfolded in a nation deeply unprepared to accept it. The Southern economy had been built almost entirely on forced labor, and emancipation threatened not only wealth but identity and power. Former slaveholders did not simply lose workers, they lost control. And control, more than labor, had always been the foundation of the system. As Reconstruction began, federal laws promised protection, but enforcement was inconsistent and often temporary. Union troops were present in some areas, absent in others. Courts struggled to define what freedom actually meant in daily life. In this uncertainty, Southern lawmakers moved quickly, reshaping the legal landscape before freedom could take root. They did not openly challenge emancipation. Instead, they redefined it. Freedom, they argued, required discipline. Order required law. And law, they claimed, required punishment. New regulations appeared almost overnight, governing how black people could work, move, and exist in public spaces. These laws were framed as neutral, but they were anything but. They narrowed the space of freedom until it became nearly unlivable. A man without a job could be arrested, even when employers refused to hire him. Leaving a workplace could be treated as a criminal act. Everyday survival became legally risky. What made this betrayal especially powerful was its appearance of legitimacy. The same nation that had declared slavery immoral now insisted that punishment was lawful. Even necessary, freedom remained intact in language, but in practice it became conditional, fragile, and easily revoked. Emancipation was not destroyed in a single moment. It was slowly undermined through rules that transformed ordinary life into potential criminal behavior. By the time the promise of freedom began to fade, a new system was already taking shape, one that looked nothing like slavery on the surface, but reproduced its outcomes with remarkable efficiency. The betrayal was not loud or dramatic. It was administrative, procedural, and quietly devastating. As the promise of emancipation narrowed, the machinery that would replace slavery began to reveal itself. It did not arrive with whips or chains, but with legal language, stamped documents, and quiet decisions made in courthouses across the South. These laws, later known as the Black Codes, were presented as tools of order in a region struggling to rebuild. In reality, they were designed to define freedom so narrowly that it became almost impossible to live within it. The Black Codes turned everyday life into a legal risk. Movement, work, speech, and even presence in public spaces were regulated in ways that applied almost exclusively to Black Americans. Freedom existed, but only under conditions set by those who had once owned it. A man who could not prove steady employment could be arrested for vagrancy, even when economic systems denied him opportunity. Leaving a job, questioning unfair treatment, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time could lead to detention. What had once been enforced through direct ownership was now enforced through paperwork and patrols. Courts played a central role in this transformation. Trials were brief, often perfunctory, and rarely offered meaningful defense. Fines were imposed that most could not pay, and failure to do so carried consequences far more severe than the original charge. The law functioned less as a system of justice and more as a gateway, moving people from freedom into confinement with remarkable efficiency. In this process, crime itself was redefined. It was no longer primarily about harm or intent, but about compliance with a social order that freedom had supposedly ended. What made the Black Codes so effective was their appearance of neutrality. On the surface, they spoke the language of responsibility and public safety. In practice, they ensured that large numbers of Black men and women would remain under constant threat of arrest. This threat shaped behavior, limited mobility, and reinforced dependence on exploitative labor arrangements. Freedom became conditional, monitored, and easily withdrawn. The transformation was subtle but profound. Slavery had once been justified openly as an economic necessity. Now control was justified as law enforcement. The Black Codes did not erase emancipation, but they hollowed it out, creating a legal environment in which freedom existed more as a theory than a lived reality. By criminalizing ordinary existence, these laws laid the groundwork for a system that would soon expand beyond the courtroom, reaching into prisons, labor camps, and the broader economy, all while claiming to operate within the boundaries of legality and order. Once the Black Codes had done their work, the next stage unfolded with unsettling efficiency. Courthouses fed jails, and jails fed an emerging marketplace where punishment became profit. States across the South faced a problem of their own making. Prisons filled rapidly, and governments lacked the resources or the desire to care for those they had confined. The solution they embraced was not rehabilitation, but outsourcing. Convict leasing transformed incarceration